Hello, I'm Naziaty Yaacob, your host for Talk Architecture Podcast, and I'm ever so grateful that you have been listening to this podcast and for all the support that you've given. Recently, a close family member has passed away, and I had to do a 1 month hiatus, and I could not continue with the podcast for that period of time. So I am now starting again to do so. So this is under the topic of artificial intelligence and architecture, which is an apology for the short hiatus. I think a month is short. So you can interpret that however you like, but it is tough to get back on track, but with a renewed vigor, I'm into being a startup founder and entrepreneur. So with background of architecture education and practice that I've had, also doing a lot of research and reading on these topics, I am very much into artificial intelligence and architecture because of that entrepreneurial side of me. So I have a theory, and this is just a short, special message to you guys out there as listeners. I have a theory that architecture education is confused because of all this university ranking. And also, architecture education is not a human being, obviously, but it is in a state of confusion and in a state of transitioning. And I don't believe architecture is going to be diminished because of the thinking aspects of the topic. Artificial intelligence will not be able to do the thinking aspect. It's just merely collecting quotes and put them up together to create a GPT, which is generative predetermined transformation. So that's the stage it's at. And of course, there are things in architecture practice, especially with regard to the softwares like Revit and other softwares that could take the information and draw up the architecture, or take the information and feed into the processes that's already predetermined and generate an outcome. And it's just helping out, a shortcut to the design process. But still, you need to reflect and take in the information and make sense out of it. And a human factor is so important. Maybe less jobs, in the sense you need to create jobs. So I'm trying to get into the point that as an entrepreneur, they call it architect entrepreneur or architectural entrepreneur or archipreneur. I've been hearing some terms. And any one of these, you are going into a specialization of something in architecture. And that specialization could disrupt the architectural industry, the architecture as we see it. That specialization. When people say, is it generalization do we go into or specialization, is both. And the outcome will be better architecture. It will be better architecture because people can have the choices of a better architecture. They have known before, okay, architecture, is it branding? Now, when we talk about branding, I'm kind of excited about this topic of branding. And branding is not just the logo, and branding is much more to that. And I'm taken to the idea that branding is a voice, and a voice meaning a way to express oneself. So a typical way to talk about this is designer items like handbags. And why is it the vogue? Why is it such a big industry, right? So the disruptors could be those who doesn't have a brand or who have good quality goods, or the branding is not to have a brand. So, not to be just like everybody else, to be yourself, something like that. So that could be the norm later, where brands in branding for consumer items of designer goods could be more of style and more of selected, more of niche rather than be the some popular trend. Trend is something, associated with branding. So Apple with Steve Jobs earlier was that icon of Steve Jobs was such a big deal, but he got the branding right with the typography or the the fonts, yeah, and so he got it right with that, because that's one of the things that Apple has that the competitors doesn't have. And there are other things like simplification of the sleek and aesthetic appeal and so on. So but when you think about it, Apple is conquering the market and still conquering the market because of the hordes of people like myself who swear that I won't buy anything else than Apple, for example. So the branding is connected to me. So in architecture practice, there is sameness or some sort of, when you perceive architects, things don't pop out, except for maybe Zaha Hadid or some Frank Gehry or maybe some architecture in terms of style, in terms of signature building. But why not functional aspects of architecture? Why can't architecture be more about functionality or usability or accessibility or any other stuff that is less to do with the visual effects? So when we think about architecture as sculptural, as some object in space, as long as people are looking at cities and skyscrapers being endearing, which people are doing less and less, by the way, they are more endeared to the spaces in between, the fact that it's easy to move around, the fact that there are more pedestrianized areas to walk and have a much more balanced life rather than rushing about in a vehicle. So, you see, there will be this trend of people appreciating more of the sense of peace. Now, would that be linking to architecture? Can architecture conquer that space? Architecture is giving out the chance to other disciplines, the urban designers or maybe architects have been giving it away, to others. But in actual fact, urban designers are architects in the traditional sense. Yeah, we had before there is no difference. In fact, before, this is the Renaissance, where the architect is also the artist, the sculptor, the what do you call it? The stonemason, the carver, the woodworker, the craftsman. So we had before the architect conquers all the discipline, but now architects or architecture is being relegated to just in a corner where they are doing mostly to do with renderings and illustration, and somehow the building has to work based on the regulation. That is so boring because we are using the building inside. We are experiencing the building. And how is it not special? How is it not unique and a feeling that this design is, in a sense, give a sense of being, give a sense of, sense and sensibilities, make yourself alive, make yourself feel wonderful in the building. No, it's all sameness, ubiquitousness, glitzy and stuff like that that's happening. Tacky and tack on architecture. So is architecture going to be regulated to style? So this is the thing. I think that architect entrepreneur has something to say about architecture, where the direction of architecture is going, by being specialized in maybe more to do with the sensory design or universal design or accessibility or the usability, like how the Apple brand had also evolved to actually having a lot of accessibility features. It is still not perfect. There are still people struggling to use a touch screen, but there is this more and more features that are helpful for the everyday. Can architecture actually compete with architecture. That means that the architects are competing with each other to put architecture as more of just a quaint thing, but a much more robust and versatile, adaptable designs that are adaptable for the future. I mean, you can put it under the ban of green building, you can put it under the ban of sustainable architecture, or ESG, environment, social governance. You can put it under whatever. It is very wide. But at the end of the day, the onus is on the architect to play their game so that people come up to their game, come up to their understanding, come up to what they are responsible with. And, it's responsible meaning that who is an architect. So at the end of the day, the specialist or architect entrepreneur is someone that I reckon under artificial intelligence and architecture, that's one of the topic that I wish to say and conclude taking the bull by the horns. The bull is artificial intelligence, and the architect have to take artificial intelligence by the horns and tame the bull, because this is necessary, and in the light of that bigger picture of how architecture will excel better when specialization becomes the norm, and then architecture will emerge better for it. So that's all I have to say. A quick special issue podcast today on artificial intelligence and architecture, extended introduction on an apology for the hiatus. Thank you very much.